Orleans Saints face the Indianapolis Colts in, you guessed it, another crucial game this week. It's week 8 of the NFL. The Saints are 3-4 and looking to get back to 500. And it kind of feels like the guy from Animal House at the Saints facility screaming all is well all week. So we'll talk about it. We'll find out if everything actually is well. This is the Saints Insider Podcast, Friday, October the 27th. I'm Zach Ewing. We've got Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan in the house. We're going to give our predictions later in the show. Got any more Kool-Aid under there?
Not yet. We're going to need it, though.
Some foreshadowing. And we'll break down the matchup this way and that. We'll talk injury report and maybe look ahead a little bit as well. Want to remind you guys to sign up for the Saints Insider newsletter. You can do that at NOLA.com/Saints Insider. That is free, and you get it in your inbox 7 days a week with all of our coverage, all of our videos, podcasts, and, of course, the written content that these guys provide on an everyday basis. You can also sign up at NOLA.com/subscribe and get all of that content. And we'd like you to sign up for the YouTube channel as well. The Saints Insider Podcast is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. I think I'd have that memorized by now.
You should. I'm disappointed.
I'm a little nervous I'm going to screw something up, you know. It's bank anywhere technology.
It's sort of like the Saints offensive players. You know, can't quite
remember,
can't remember the plays.
I haven't checked my tablet lately and, you know, still need the cards on game day.
Right.
So, Saints and Colts this weekend, guys. It's a rematch of the Super Bowl with two very Super Bowl unworthy teams.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say right now. I think you could say this the Saints defense might be a Super Bowl worthy defense, but obviously this is something that we've been talking about throughout the season, throughout the last couple of years. I feel like a broken record. I keep saying the last 2 seasons, but at some point, it's we got to see what this offense can do. Like, can they actually reach their potential? It's getting late on them right now. I don't even know if we could say time's running out because it might be out.
Yeah, we're at the midpoint of the season almost. I mean,
after this game, that's 8 out of 17.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I've mentioned this last week, but the division is still crappy, just like it was last year. So I don't think this team's going to be out of it for a while because I think the Bucs and Falcons are going to continue to kind of be what they are too. So I mean, the Saints are a game back right now, despite how bad they played. So I think this may go on for a while.
Yeah, the Saints have, Jeff, actually surpassed 400 yards the last 2 weeks, and one of the only teams in the league to do that. One of the only other teams in the league to do that is the Indianapolis Colts. So what kind of looked early in the year like this might be one of those 16-13 games, we'll get more in depth, but this seems like the offense has at least figured out how to move the ball between the 20s.
Yeah, the problem's been like situational offense, right? Like red zone, third down, those key downs that they just, for whatever reason, have not been able to be efficient on. And some of this feels a little to me like empty calories for some of their offensive yards until they're able to put it together when they got to have it. They got to have it down on third down or got to have it in the red zone. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, but they're going to have to score some points this week because one thing Indy is doing is they're consistently putting up a lot of points. I mean, they scored 30-something last week against maybe the best defense in the league, the Cleveland Browns. So I think the Saints, they're not going to win this game in the teens. I don't see how they can do that.
The other thing Indy is doing is they're giving up a lot of points.
Yep. Big time.
The Browns scored 39 on them last week. The Browns might be worse than the Saints are offensively. And they had P.J. Walker at
especially with P.J. Walker at quarterback.
And you look at what the Colts have done throughout the course of the season, I think they rank 30th in the NFL in scoring defense right now, giving up 27.3 points per game. It's a golden opportunity for the Saints to finally get this together and have it look good for 60 minutes. See if they can do it.
But look, they got, I think, a rookie corner. They're starting 2 rookie corners. One of them's hurt, I think.
Juju Brents is out.
Right.
Yeah,
so, I mean, if you're going to get right, this is the week to get right in the passing attack. Like Luke said, I mean, they're down at the bottom of the league. They don't have really an elite pass rusher there's no one, there's no Josh Allen on this team. So this should be the week to kind of get your mojo back if you're going to do it, especially what we consider to be the strength of the Saints offense, their receiving core. They should have big-time mismatches downfield.
You mentioned injuries. The Saints are getting healthier. James Hurst's not going to play. He's out. But Ryan Ramczyk was back at practice, Luke. Alontae Taylor did pop up with, the hip injury? Hamstring injury? I'm having trouble remembering now.
I'm blanking on it. They have, they're getting healthier. They have 15 guys in the injury report.
All of them, limited, though.
Yeah.
It seems like they're trending.
I think
No,
about as
I
healthy
agree.
as it gets.
It's this weird, dichotomy between how many guys are really obviously banged up and dealing with something, but also you're expecting them to play. Like, Hurst is really the only player that we're expecting to be out for this game. So, they're in really about as good a shape as you can reasonably expect the team to be in, and especially after the last 2 years where they were just constantly missing guys because of injury, important players. They got all of them right now. Do something with it.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, Rod. It's not early anymore. Derek Carr is not a new guy in the building anymore. They've said they've been close. They need to fix it. The excuses are running out.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say when we mentioned the injuries. The excuses are now gone. That's something that I think Dennis Allen, he was able to sort of use that last year. We had this injury, but now they can't say that. And so, it's just time to start winning. And all the players have sort of mentioned the same thing, that they know it's time to, stop all the rhetoric and all these narratives about what they need to do, and they just need to actually go out and do it. So that's what this game's going to be all about. I think it's now or never for the Saints. I know I just said that the division's still
but at
wide
some
open,
point,
at some point
you're going to have to get some wins.
Because if you lose this one, I think all the doubt really starts to creep in. And we talked about this little mini bye and the team having a chance to reset. And if it doesn't happen this week against this opponent, I just don't know when it happens.
I'm going to say the doubt's not going to creep in. It's going to be, we're going to bring out the Kool-Aid man again. It's going to be the Kool-Aid man busting through the door, carrying all the doubt with it, I don't see how they could go to 3-5 after this game and look ineffective the way they have for the first 7 games and have any sort of, it's right around the corner. We got it. It's like, no, this is like crisis mode right now. As much as they don't want to say it is 100%. You got to get it done now. If it doesn't happen now, you are going to have you have to make some pretty significant changes.
Yeah, it's it's such a teeter-totter game or seesaw game, whatever. I said the little kid word. I got kids. If you win it, then hey, we got the Bears at home, right? Get back above 500, build some momentum into the bye week. But if you lose it, I just don't see how you can expect to beat anybody at that point.
Yeah, look, talking to the players and coaches, it sounds like they all feel this sense of urgency, right? They've been meeting. They've had all these FaceTime meetings. These were all initiated by a lot of the players, the leaders on the team. So clearly they feel like this is a gotta-have-it game. You can just feel that kind of sense of urgency from them. So if they don't produce, they're going all in. Now, whether that's good enough to win or not, I don't know, but they're not going to lose this game because of a lack of focus or overlooking the Colts. That's out the window. They've lost 4 or 5 games. So it's going to be, are they good enough now? Have they gotten these, addressed these issues that have held them back, especially offensively? To me, that's, they got to prove it now. And then the players are all saying that. But I do think it's interesting that they all have said they've had all these, FaceTimes, these meetings. I talked to Pete Carmichael yesterday. He said a bunch of players came up to his office one-on-one. He's met with them. He's done a lot of self-scouting in terms of calling former players and coaches that he's coached with that's been in this offense, basically consulting them, what are you seeing? What do you suggest? There's a lot of soul searching going on. So we'll see if it comes to fruition this week, if it actually results in more positive play.
They seem really optimistic. They're trying to use this 10-day break with the Thursday game last week as hitting the reset button. So let's dig into the matchup. The Saints Insider Podcast. Saints at Colts. It's noon on Sunday. It's on Fox. At the betting line, the Saints actually flipped into the favorites position. They're now 1-point favorites. They were, I think, 1.5-point underdogs to start the week. So there is obviously some support for the Saints in the market. I don't know what to say about that, but we'll dig into the matchup. Want you to let you know the Saints Insider podcast sponsored by Bank Plus. We'd also like to thank our friends at Ralph's Market, which cordially invites you to its Fall Wine Gala Friday, November the 3rd. That's 1 week from today at LeBerge in Baton Rouge. Dress in your Great Gatsby best and sample 80 wines and hors d'oeuvres. It's the Ralph's Market Fall Wine Gala, November 3rd. Get tickets now at ralphsag.com.
You can wear your knitwear if you want.
Yeah, you can. 80 wine samples. You've got to pace yourself at this thing. I hope.
Duncan would never pace himself at that thing.
Yeah, I'd drink 80 wine samples a night. It's not an event or a festival. So it's just like a Thursday night.
Call an Uber home, boys and girls. Okay, when the Saints have the ball, we've already been through this just on this podcast alone. They've been moving the ball a little bit better, but it's those crucial plays. It's the and not only that, but it's like early in the game. They've moved the ball the last couple of weeks after they've fallen behind in the game, Luke. And you got to do something when it counts.
Yeah, and one of the things that we kind of heard a lot of guys talk about, and in fairness to them, it's been asked of them, but when we really saw the Saints offense probably at its best all season was in that fourth quarter. They were tempo. Everything was fast, and they were the aggressor, and they had their foot on the gas, and Jacksonville was on its heels. They couldn't sub in and out, and the Saints really took advantage of that. Obviously, you can't do that for 60 minutes in a game or even 30 minutes of a game. But I think you can situationally, especially when you're kind of lagging a little bit, just, hit the accelerator and try to inject some life into this offense. Who cares if you go 3 and out in 30 seconds? Like, really? This offense has been so poor over such long stretches. I think you got to try these drastic things. Go no huddle in the first quarter with 7 minutes left. Try to do this over a couple drives and see if that really gets things going. Because it looked like Derek Carr was at his most comfortable there. They were getting some space for their receivers to operate. I think they were using the middle of the field, which is something we haven't seen them do all season. So yeah, I think they need to try something because what they're doing just on a down and down basis has been completely ineffective all season long.
Luke mentioned the middle of the field. I think if this team gets Juwan Johnson back this week, which we sort of think they will, I think he's a guy they could utilize in that position, which would obviously help this offense as well. So, I think there are some things that we might see this week that can help them.
Every single one of us thought Juwan was going to have an awesome year. That dude looked unstoppable in training camp. And you look through the entire history of Derek Carr as a quarterback, and he's been somebody who just is consistently using the tight ends. And it was just, where was it? The first 3 games of the season when he was playing. It was completely absent. It was one of the weirdest things about the way they were playing offense early. Yeah. We're assuming he's going to be back and playing this week. Dennis Allen's basically already said he's playing, so get him involved, man. He's a special player. He's got gifts that nobody else in this roster has.
All those balls that have been going to Taysom Hill should be going to Juwan Johnson. Yeah. So they have been going to the tight end lately. It's just Juwan's been out, but I would expect Juwan Johnson to get those targets. And if you look the last few weeks, the Colts have been giving up a lot of yards to tight ends. Some good tight ends in that division, but I would think, look, if you're in fantasy football out there, or you want the over/under on yards, I think Juwan Johnson's gonna have a good game.
I got a chance to talk to Juwan on, I guess it was Wednesday, and one of the things he talked about that he thinks he can bring to this team is just, he said he thinks the juice is missing and they're just not having fun anymore. But I think they're not having fun because they're not winning. But he just feels like he can bring some of that energy, and he talked about. He said, I think I brought that in practice, today, whatever day that was on Wednesday. So I think he is a big part of this offense. And like Luke said, during the training camp, you could tell that he was a guy that Derek Carr was really comfortable throwing the ball to. And, we'll see if that helps.
Yeah. This is like the third time this season we've said, okay, Pete Carmichael's going to have to change something. We're going to see more tempo. Or we said after the Bucs game, we need to see, more involvement with this or that. Dunk, is he actually going to change anything?
Yeah, I thought that exact thing when we were talking to Pete the other day. It's like, it feels like it's like, okay, what's the solution of the week, right?
Correct.
Well, and it doesn't get solved, to the extent they want it to. I really think it just comes down to Derek Carr playing better and the offensive line playing better, in my opinion. I think those two things have to happen at the same time. It's kind of fundamental to basic offensive football. But, when you watch that JTO, I hate to keep talking about the JTO Sullivan video. When you watch it, you see a lot of breakdowns in those two areas. The receivers pretty much don't drop balls. You know what I mean? I know they've had some problems running routes, but I do think another area we haven't really talked a lot about is they got to get the running game going.
Yep.
It really has been consistently underperforming all year. Even when Kamara came back, we all thought that's going to get better now that Alvin's back. And it really isn't. And it's not, I don't think, his fault. We all know he could run. But it's just not a lot of either room there from the line or the scheme is outdated. There's something wrong with it. And this is a week where I think, if it's going to get better, it could happen against this front because it's not a dominant front that Indianapolis has. They obviously have a few good, talented players, but they're kind of light up front. Gus Bradley runs a very similar kind of scheme to what we saw last week. I mean, that was Jacksonville's whole approach, right? Let the Saints throw underneath, let them do those check downs. We're not going to give up anything cheap. And I would think that Indy's going to try and do some of the same things because they play a lot of zone defense. But they should be able to establish a run. A lot of people run on this team.
I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but it would be surprising to me if the Saints have had 5 runs this year that picked up 15 yards or more. I think the long by Saints running back is 19.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
I think Alvin's had a 19-yarder. I think Tony Jones had a 19-yarder. Taysom might have had 1. I mean, everything. 3 yards, 2 yards, 4 yards, 2 yards, negative yardage. I just if they could. I mean, they've got explosive players there. It's got to be something, and that would help if they were able to get that going. That would help Derek Carr, and it would really open a lot of things up. It would open up the play action game. I mean, it's just it's got to be. It's something they've built so much of their offensive success on in years past. It's got to be a big part of it now. We'll see if Jamal Williams can be part of that. He only got 5 carries last week, but I'd expect a bigger role for him, mainly because they can't have Alvin Kamara on this pace. I mean, he's going to completely fall off if he's getting 26 touches a game.
Yeah, they need the explosive runs. They also need to turn some of those 1s and 2s into 4s and 5s and 6s. And, I mean, at least give yourself a chance to stay ahead of the sticks, and that opens up so much more of that playbook, too.
Yeah, well, and you also can't have that offensive line blocking 3rd and 8 and 3rd and 12. Something like 70% of their sacks they've given up this year, and they've given up a lot of sacks, on 3rd downs. I think 12 or 13 third down sacks this year, which is, I mean, obviously drive killers.
And I think we saw Taysom Hill got a little banged up, right? It was wearing a red jersey in practice this week. He's a key part of their running game, so it'll be something to monitor because I think he also has that capability. We've seen it in the past of breaking a big run, especially when they get the numbers working. So I think that'll be another key factor in this game is how healthy is he and how much do they use him.
Use Taysom Hill in the red zone.
Right.
I pick that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't done a very good job in any aspect in the red zone, but that's one that we've seen in the past with Pete Carmichael has been successful, and I don't know why it's eluded them this year.
We've seen that a couple times where they'll get 1st and goal from the 8, and they'll run Taysom and pick up 3, and then they'll take him off the field or split him out or whatever, and then try to do more traditional offense. And it's like, just do that 2 more times. He's going to get 3 every time, and you're going to be in the end zone. And they don't seem to. I mean, you got a better chance of that than what has been happening.
I would take a 100 times out of 100 a Taysom Hill run over a goal line fade. Please let me never see one of those again. It's just such a low percentage throw, and they've been throwing it,
especially the way they execute
all season.
Well, the jumbo package with Colin Saunders at fullback,
Yeah, what was it? It was 0 running backs, 3 tight ends, 7 offensive linemen, and a defensive tackle. Right? Is that 11?
That's as jumbo as it gets.
It
Doesn't get much
awesome.
bigger than that, yeah.
1930s football, it's a Saints offense.
Anything from inside the 2, just go.
Right.
Okay, so we'll flip things over to when the Colts have the ball. And I think just to wrap things up, the Saints are going to have to score some points in this game because the Colts, look, their offense will turn the ball over. They make some mistakes, but they also move the ball. And you talked about last week, Luke, they moved the ball on the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns play man defense. I think the Browns and Saints are 1-2 in playing man defense. I can't remember the order, but very similar defenses. They're going to play a lot of man coverage. And Gardner Minshew is not afraid to fire the ball into some of those windows and make some big plays.
He's not, which is, I think you'll see games like last week where he goes out and he lights it up and you're just like, wow, this guy's awesome. And you'll also see games like the one he played against the Saints last year where you're just like, That guy's clearly not a starting caliber NFL quarterback. Like he's got a lot of like Ryan Fitzpatrick to him, I think. You know, where it's really boom or bust. So I mean, who knows? Saints could get the boom, and be in a shootout. Which like, do you want this Saints team in a shootout? Probably not. But they could very well also get the Gardner Minshew who's going to throw 3 balls right to their defensive backs and complete less than 50% of his passes, and the ones that he does complete are within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. It's like a roll of the dice with him every week.
Shootout would be a nice change, tell you that. We kind of had one last week.
Kind of.
Oh, shootout.
Well, I mean, it was by
20,
Saint standards,
points.
it was a shootout.
Look, I think it all starts with stopping the run with this team.
100%.
I mean, Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss. This is a really good offensive line. Ryan Kelly. Right now, I was just looking this week. Pro Football Focus, #1 center in the whole league. Is that Ryan Kelly? Quentin Nelson, I think, #3 guard performing so far this year in the league. And their left tackle is an interesting guy, Bernard Rynum, I think is how you pronounce it. A guy that I think was a tight end at Central Michigan. They converted to tackle. He's a guy that actually mocked to the Saints when they ended up taking Trevor Penning. They got Rynum in the 2nd round, I believe, and I think he's probably turned out to be a little better right now than Trevor Penning. He's playing very well at left tackle. So they've got, what I'm getting at is they've got a very good offensive line. And so it'll be a big challenge for the Saints front to stop that running game because that'll take the pressure off of Minshew. Minshew will definitely turn it over. I mean, he's also fumbled a lot in the pocket, getting hit. So there's an opportunity here. And the Saints actually done pretty well not turning it over lately, on offense. I mean, they haven't really turned it over. Their penalties have been down a little bit. I mean, they didn't have a lot of penalties against the Jaguars. So those 2 areas, they've at least leveled off a little bit.
I was going to mention, you mentioned his fumbles. I heard a stat the other day. He's starting like 27 games, and he actually has 27 fumbles. I mean, he extends plays, but I mean, if you can get to him, he will lay the ball on the ground. They've turned it over 8 times, I think, the last 2 weeks. They're 3-0 when they don't turn it over. They're 0-4 when they have turned it over. So, I mean, to me, I think that's probably the biggest key to this game is forcing some turnovers. Like Jeff mentioned, don't let the 2 running backs kill you. And, you try to let Gardner Minshew have to beat you, and, you take your chances on him turning the ball over at some point.
One thing I want to mention about this rushing attack for the Colts, they put up like 190 against the Titans, who up to that point had not allowed a team to cross 80 yards on the ground all season. And then last week against the Browns, who had similar numbers against the run. I think at one point they were #1 run defense in the NFL, 170 yards. And then you look at the Saints, all the stats are great for the Saints right now. I think they're top 5 in the NFL in EPA per play and success rate against the run. I think they're like the number 12 run defense overall, but that's the quarterback runs they've given up. But then you look at who they've played. Out of the bottom 10 teams in the NFL in rush offense right now, the Saints have played half of them in 7 games. 5 of their 7 have been against bottom 10 rushing offenses so far. So, like, we're actually going to get a sense of how good the Saints' run defense is, whether the Colin Saunders, Nathan Shepard, Brian Brzee additions this offseason actually made a difference. Because they were awful last year against the run. And it was teams like this who really gave them fits. So, I think they're just thanking their lucky stars that Anthony Richardson isn't in there.
Well, and this is where this gets tricky for the Saints, right? Because you've got to stop this elite rushing attack. Well, at the same time, you want to force Minshew to beat you, get some pressure on him, which they didn't get any on Trevor Lawrence last Thursday. I mean, they had 1 pressure the entire game, no sacks. You've got to find a way to at least limit that running game and get at least a modicum of pressure in the backfield.
Yeah, I think that's the entire key to this game. Again, I just think it's all about, making Minshew try to force some throws or make them scramble or, just get a hand on him because he does have this, tendency to lay the ball on the ground. So you just have to do whatever you can to make that happen, and they got to find that balance of stopping the 2 different things.
We see some blitzing in this game?
Well, they did a little bit more. When they tend to not blitz to start, and then if they're not getting pressure, DA will bring it. And they may have to. They may have to because they're really not getting home with anyone but Carl Granderson. I mean, they're getting a little pressure, but not the sacks. Nobody's getting home. And but this is a guy that he'll scramble around. He's kind of like a poor man's Baker Mayfield. Is that possible to be poor man's Baker Mayfield?
Wow.
And I think Tyrann Mathieu said
middle class man's
middle class Baker Mayfield. Tyrann Mathieu said he's an annoying scrambler. That's kind of what Baker Mayfield is too, right? But I mean, Minshew had some big scrambles last week to extend drives. I think he scored 2 touchdowns running, so he can. He's athletic enough to get out and make some plays, and that's been a bugaboo with this defense for whatever reason. I think part of it is that they play so much man that the DBs all have their backs to the line of scrimmage a lot of times, and once a quarterback gets out, we saw that with Trevor Lawrence a couple times. There's just no one there because they all got their backs in coverage. But they've got to maintain their rush lanes better. That's something that's really kind of been a trend last 2 or 3 years, feels like.
Zach, you're kind of the human calculator. They've given up 170 rushing yards to quarterbacks in 7 games. What is that per game?
What would that be? 24? 24.3?
Wow.
24.372.
You might be right.
No,
24.3 and whatever 2/7 is.
Yeah, and they're giving up. That's like basically a third of what they're allowing to running backs per game. They're giving up 67 yards per game to running backs. So that's not good.
Yeah, and I mean, again, he's one of the elder statesmen on this team. He's a bona fide leader. I mean, Cam Jordan has not had his name called an awful lot this year. You talk about Carl Granderson being the only defensive end getting home. They got to get something from these other guys at some point.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, Cam gets a lot of attention, no doubt. Still does. Is he 33, 34 years old right now? He still gets a lot of attention. I think he's still a very good player, especially holding that edge against the run. I think that's a massively underappreciated part of his game. But they're paying him, 15 to 17 million, whatever he's making right now, to get after the passer too. So they got to have that from him.
And look, I think no one's talking about this, and I don't think it's cropped up a lot on the injury report, but I mean, I think he's dealing with a back. I mean, it's something that I think at this stage of his career, he's always going to be battling, but you don't have, that trunk that can affect you. And he'll never say it. He'll never talk about it publicly. He's not a guy who makes excuses, but I do think that's probably affecting his performance a little bit.
Yeah, definitely a good point. Moving on, real quick word on special teams before we get to predictions. Are we reaching sort of point of no return with Blake Grupe and or Lou Headley? I guess I would say Headley more likely than Grupe at this point. These guys have to perform.
Yeah, I talked to special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi about that yesterday, and I think they are still feeling pretty good about these guys. Rizzi said, look, you can't miss the 29-yarder. It's inexcusable. The one he missed against was it Houston, right? But the misses he's had on the 50-plus yarders, they're like, that's going to happen. So I think they feel pretty solid about him. With Headley, they were basically bringing up that they think he's still doing the things they want him to do. Because his net punting average, there's 4 rookie kickers, 4 rookie punters in the NFL. I think his net punting average is second among those 4 rookies. They think he's fine. What they want to avoid is some of it's less the distance and the hang time on the punts, where we kind of looked at that one at the end of the game last week and thought like that was a poor punt. They're like the distance and the hang time wasn't terrible. It was the direction.
Right.
He's supposed to be kicking that to the sideline, and he let it drift too far into the middle of the field, away from the coverage, away from where the coverage was going. And that was the problem with that one. That's why you got the return on it, and that's why they set up in plus territory at the end of that game, and they ended up having a pretty easy go-ahead touchdown there. So
I actually thought about that. If that ball is to the sideline, it's not caught and it bounces another 10 yards, and that's 20 yards of difference.
And that's what he said. He said it was almost the exact same punt as the one before that, the returner's going to the sideline. He can't make the easy catch. He has to let it go with the coverage coming down on him. And then that thing rolled out 20 yards. He had a 62-yard punt right there. So he's like, the mistake wasn't in the hang time or the distance of the punt. It was with the direction of the punt. Which, look, I think it's fair to critique the coach making the critique, right? These guys have not performed at the level that you want them to perform at, but they are both still rookies, and I think the Saints are are understanding that there are going to be growing pains with these guys. And with Groupie especially, he brought up, you look at some of the best kickers in the NFL right now, Younghoe Koo, Daniel Carlson, Harrison Butker, anybody who's not Justin Tucker, all those guys started somewhere else first and were cut before landing with the team and then becoming really, really good kickers. So they're just wanting to be patient as possible with these guys before they decide it's not working.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, I listened to Mickey Loomis on the radio this week, and he echoed that. Basically said, look, these are young guys. They got our full support. They're not on the verge of being cut, trust me. Now, if it continues over the course of several more weeks, I think they may have to do something. But he mentioned John Casey when he was in Seattle, and they cut him when he was young, struggled, and the guy ended up kicking 20 years and was one of the best kickers in the league for 2 decades. And he said, I've learned my lesson on stuff like that. And they think he's They think Groupie is definitely talented enough to be an NFL kicker, and I think we all agree on that. So,
and this is where I guess I would just, and it's hindsight, and it's maybe not fair, but to go back to the beginning of the season, Rod, and say this is a team that didn't have much margin for error, and we all kind of saw that, and they went with the rookie specialists, and now they're saying, oh, hey, they're rookies, they're going to make mistakes, and it's like, yeah, they are, and that's why we questioned it at the time.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to question it. I mean, it was just you had a guy in Will Lutz who was coming off an injury-riddled season, and you felt he was a little reliable. But with these guys, you're kind of hesitant when they come on the field. You just don't really know what's going to happen. I know Groupie had an extra point the other day that he barely made. Dunked in. So when you make those kind of decisions, I mean, you're going to get criticized for them, and everything's going to be under a microscope every time these guys come on the field to kick or punt.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely fair. It's one of the things Rizzy brought up. And look, this is the NFL. I mean, how many one-score games have the Saints played in this year? Like basically all of them except for the Bucs and the Patriots game, right?
Yeah.
So 5 out of 7 one-score games. These plays are critical. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it after the Houston game, over and over again, with all the with the missed field goals, and that changes the game at the end. And they're in desperation mode at the end when they could be going in to kick a go-ahead field goal instead.
Yep.
So it's absolutely worth criticism, 100%. They brought this upon themselves, but they also, and now that they've made this decision, they're saying they have to be patient with it rather than making a rash decision on these guys.
I think Jeff was telling me the other day, was it you, that Will Lutz hadn't missed a field goal since the first game?
He missed an extra point and a field goal in the first game.
Hadn't missed
nothing since.
And I'll say this. I mean, I keep bringing up Pro Football Focus, but like the one area, I mean, the Saints, according to their evaluation and grading system, the Saints have the best special teams in the whole league right now. So that's even with the missed kicks. I mean, so it goes back to your point about what Rizzy's saying about net punting and things like that. Their coverage units are very good, Saints. And the return units, obviously, they got a touchdown out of Shaheed against the Packers. So they've been solid in special teams. Their defense, I think, Pro Football Focus top 10 right now. I think they're like 8th, but obviously very good. It's just the offense, that's really overall. We all know that, but that's an area that I think the Saints should feel good about their special teams.
Great place to transition into our picks, I think, because it still feels like, despite all the criticism and chaos and everything, they're close in these areas. So, do we think they'll get over the hump? Saints at Colts on Sunday. Saints Insider Predictions brought to you by Bank Plus.
We don't have the cooler. We're going to do this.
We don't have the cooler, but go ahead, Rod. Start us out.
Okay. I picked, and my score was, I was really kind of just having a little fun with it.
Let's go. I love it.
There hadn't been a lot of.
Your score was sentimental. Good.
Yes. Just kind of having fun with it because we haven't had a whole lot of fun with these picks this season. But
I have. I'm 5-2.
Yeah, I'm right behind you. And I should have picked the Colts probably just to catch up with you. But I picked the Saints to win 31-17. If you're a Saints fan, you know what that score means in Saints-Colts history. The score is Super Bowl 44. And I don't think that's 31 points because the offense has found itself. I do think the Saints will get a defensive score at some point. And again, that just kind of goes back to the Colts the tendency to turn the ball over. So I picked 31-17 Saints.
It's funny you mentioned that. You can check out, I have an exclusive interview with Derek Carr every week on NOLA.com/Saints. And I asked him about that game this week, that Super Bowl 44. That was like his first date with his wife. They were at a Super Bowl party watching that game. So I don't know that he remembers a ton of the game, but he does remember it being that game. I also picked the Saints, and we talk about the red zone struggles and Blake Grupe. I got him kicking 4 field goals in this game, including the game winner to win 26-24. Little higher scoring. I think the Saints, again, move the ball up and down, only get into the end zone a couple times. But the key for me, guys, is a better start. If you can get in the point where this game is competitive and back and forth instead of you're chasing 10 or 14 points in the second half, then I think the Saints have a real chance to win this game. So I also took the Saints.
You know, I think the Saints are in a desperate situation right now. They are a team that believes they should be contending for, at the very least, a division title, and they have not looked like that so far. Whereas I feel like the Colts are in a different spot right now. They had, high draft pick, rookie quarterback. He's out for the season. They got to back up the rest of the way. They're just kind of seeing what they've got. I don't think the Colts have realistic expectations of winning a division, making a playoff run. Right? So I think the Saints are the team with more to lose right now. And I think that, especially, I talked about it last week with this defense, how I felt so bad for them because like they felt they can't give up 20 points or they're going to lose a game. But the last couple of weeks, they've had some rough stretches. They haven't played a 60-minute game. It looked terrible in the first half of both those last 2 games and looked really, really good in the second half. And I think that's kind of lit a fire under them to be like, hey, like we can't have these lapses. They are saying that they are too good of a unit to go out there and kind of look lost for 30 minutes. So I think they'll have a better game this week. I think this offense is going to, at some point, just show a little bit more. I think this is a good week for it. I've already referenced the Colts are not a very good defense, giving up almost 28 points per game. So I'm picking the Saints to win 23-17 in this one.
All right, Jeff.
Wow.
Any disagreement there?
No, I'm with you guys. I'm going Saints. I mean, it's now or never. It's now or never. Come on, man. They got to win this game.
Yeah.
They're the more desperate team. They have to have it. I agree with Rod. I think they're going to get a short field, easy score some point with a turnover, maybe some special teams. And they have to start better. That's a really good point. I didn't think about that. But the last 2 weeks, they've been playing from behind the whole game. And I do think there could be a danger if they fall behind early and don't produce offensively on their first, say, 2 or 3 drives. There could be a crisis of confidence because they just haven't been able to put it together. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I'm predicting one thing. Just remember this: big-time trick play. Big-time offensive trick play.
How about a surprise onside kick?
I'm seeing there's going to do something to kind of get
really
some
going
energy.
with my 31.
Thomas Morstead ain't walking through that door.
Ambush. Morstead, by the way, is 5th in the league in punting right now. Just throwing that out there.
For the Jets?
Yes.
Still with the Jets?
The ageless one.
No doubt.
You don't see too many punters out there doing knocking out 45 pull-ups with 2 kids on each leg and a 45-pound weight hanging from his waist. That dude's a beast.
Thomas Morstead Appreciation Podcast. May have to have one. But that's it. We have the Kool-Aid kiss of death here. We have all 4 of us picking the Saints. That's actually happened twice before this year. They beat the Titans. They lost to the Bucs the previous 2 times. So it's not necessarily a kiss of death. But, we'll see. Big game on Sunday. Join us for the Saints Insider post-game show live from Lucas Oil Stadium afterward. And then we will be back on this feed on Wednesday. Keep in mind, you can subscribe to the free Saints Insider newsletter. Go to NOLA.com/Saints Insider and sign up for the YouTube channel. Subscribe, sign up for notifications, and check us out on Apple Podcasts or Spotify as well. For Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan, behind the glasses, Robert Young and Norman Bell, we appreciate their help, and also Bank Plus and Ralph's Market. Our thanks to them, too. This is the Saints Insider Podcast. We'll see you next time.